At dinner, my daughter-in-law looked at me and said, "Sit somewhere else." I didn't argue. I simply smiled, moved my chair next to the family lawyer, and waited. When the documents came out, the whole room fell silent. Before I tell you what happened, make sure to subscribe to my channel and comment where you're watching from. My name is Eleanor. I am 67 years old, and I live with my son, Michael, his wife, Vanessa, and my 2 grandchildren, Noah and Lily. Since my husband passed away, I have tried to keep this family together the best I can. I cook, I help with the children, and I do my best to stay out of the way. But lately, I have felt more like a guest in my own home than family. Michael works long hours and is often too tired to notice the way Vanessa treats me. She is polite when others are around, but behind closed doors, she makes it clear she doesn't want me involved. Sometimes it is small comments about how I fold laundry or the way I set the table. Other times it is sharper, cutting words meant to remind me that this is her house. One afternoon, as I tried to help in the kitchen, Vanessa sighed loudly. "Eleanor, could you not hover while I'm cooking? You'll just make a mess." I smiled weakly and stepped back. I was only trying to help. Michael walked in, glancing between us, and said softly, "Mom, just let Vanessa handle it." He didn't mean to hurt me, but his silence always cut deeper than her words. The only ones who truly make me feel needed are Noah and Lily. They run to me after school, telling me their stories, handing me their drawings, asking me to read their favorite books. With them, I still feel like I matter, but around the adults, I am often treated as if I am invisible. So when Vanessa told me at dinner to sit somewhere else, it wasn't the first time she had tried to push me aside. But that night, I was ready in a way she did not expect. The dinner was supposed to be special. Vanessa had planned it days in advance, making a point to invite Michael's closest relatives, and even asking our longtime family lawyer, Mr. Harris, to attend. She called it a family gathering, but deep down, I suspected it had more to do with business than celebration. I knew enough to sense that something important was about to happen, and I could feel the tension in the air from the moment I entered the dining room. The table was beautifully set, with polished silverware, sparkling glasses, and dishes arranged neatly. Vanessa loved to show off, and this evening was no different. She wore a fitted dress, her hair styled perfectly, and her smile stretched wide for the guests. To everyone else, she looked like the perfect hostess. To me, it was another performance. When I walked in, Noah and Lily rushed toward me. "Grandma, sit by us," they said, tugging on my hand. Their little voices filled my heart with warmth. But before I could move closer, Vanessa's voice cut across the room. "Eleanor, why don't you sit at the far end tonight?" she said casually, as if it were the most natural suggestion in the world. "We need space here for the main discussion." The words stung more than she probably realized. Or maybe she knew exactly what she was doing. For a moment, the entire table went quiet, all eyes shifting toward me. Michael adjusted his tie and cleared his throat, avoiding my gaze. I felt the weight of humiliation pressing on my chest. In front of my family, my grandchildren, and even the lawyer, I was being treated like someone who didn't belong at her own table. But instead of letting her see my hurt, I smiled. "Of course," I said softly. And then, instead of walking to the end of the table as she had directed, I pulled out the chair right beside Mr. Harris and sat down. The room shifted slightly. I could feel Vanessa's eyes burning into me, but I kept my face calm and polite. Mr. Harris gave me a small nod, his expression unreadable but kind, and that gave me the courage to hold my ground. The conversation at dinner started light. Small talk about work, school, and neighborhood events filled the air. Vanessa laughed loudly at her own jokes. Michael responded with tired nods, and the children whispered to each other while nibbling at their food, but beneath the surface, something was building. I could sense it in the way Vanessa kept glancing at the folder near Mr. Harris's chair. Finally, after the plates were cleared, Vanessa leaned forward, her smile sharpening. "Now that everyone's comfortable," she said, "we can finally get to the important part." She tapped the table lightly with her manicured fingers. "Mr. Harris, do you have the documents?" My heart skipped. So this was the real reason for the dinner. I had suspected it, but hearing her say it confirmed everything. The documents she referred to weren't ordinary papers. They had to be related to the estate, my late husband's will, the house we lived in, or perhaps the money he had worked hard to save for his family. Vanessa's tone was confident, as if she already knew what the outcome would be. She glanced around the table like a queen addressing her court. "It's time we get everything finalized. Michael and I have discussed it, and we think it's best to put everything under one name for clarity." Her words hung in the air, bold and heavy. My son stayed quiet, his eyes downcast, which told me more than I needed to know. He had agreed to this, or at least allowed it to happen, even if it meant pushing his own mother aside. Noah frowned, confused by the seriousness of the conversation, and tugged on my sleeve. "Grandma, what does she mean?" he whispered. I squeezed his hand gently and whispered back, "Don't worry, sweetheart." Outwardly, I kept my calm, but inside, my resolve grew stronger. Vanessa turned to me, her smile sugar-sweet, but her eyes cold. "Eleanor, I'm sure you understand. It's just practical. At your age, it's easier if Michael and I handle everything. You shouldn't worry yourself with complicated matters." Her words cut deep. They weren't just dismissive. They were meant to erase me from the life I had helped build with my husband. They wanted to take everything he and I had worked for, as if I no longer mattered. I didn't respond. Instead, I folded my hands neatly in my lap and turned my eyes toward Mr. Harris. He cleared his throat, preparing to open his folder. The sound of the clasp clicking open echoed louder than the laughter had earlier, and suddenly, the air in the room felt charged with anticipation. Vanessa leaned back in her chair, satisfied, certain that she had already won. Michael sat rigid, his silence betraying his guilt. The children looked around, sensing something important but not fully understanding, and I remained steady, my calm smile hiding the storm inside me. That night, they thought they were about to erase me from the story. What they didn't know was that I had already written the next chapter. As Mr. Harris opened the folder, I sat quietly, my hands folded neatly on the table. On the outside, I looked calm, but inside, my heart beat with a steady determination. For weeks, I had been preparing for this moment. They thought I was old, fragile, and easily brushed aside. What they didn't know was that I had been listening, paying attention, and taking careful steps long before this dinner. It all started a month earlier. One afternoon, as I folded laundry in the hallway, I overheard Vanessa speaking sharply on the phone. Her voice was low, but the walls carried every word. "Once everything is under our name, she won't be able to say a thing. The house, the savings, all of it will finally be ours. Michael will understand. It's just easier this way." I froze, my hands gripping the towel I was folding. At that moment, I realized her intentions were not about practicality or family unity. They were about control. She wanted to push me out completely, to erase the life my husband and I had built together. That evening, I sat alone in my room with tears on my cheeks, staring at the old photo of my husband on the dresser. "You worked your whole life for this family," I whispered to his picture. "I won't let them dishonor your memory." The next day, I called Mr. Harris, our family lawyer who had been with us since my husband's first business. He had always been fair, always respected me, and I trusted him more than anyone else. When I asked if we could meet privately, he agreed without hesitation. We met at his office, a small but well-kept place filled with books and documents. I sat across from him, my hands trembling slightly as I explained what I had overheard. He listened patiently, nodding now and then, his brow furrowed with concern. "Eleanor," he said gently, "your husband left clear instructions. He wanted you protected. He made sure that your name remained on the home and that a portion of his savings was to be reserved for you and your grandchildren's future. Nothing Vanessa is suggesting can change those wishes unless you give them up willingly." A wave of relief washed over me, but I also felt a new sense of strength. "Then let's make sure everything is secure," I told him firmly. Together, we went through the paperwork, updating and reaffirming documents. We arranged for a trust fund in my name, ensuring that Noah and Lily's future would not be controlled by anyone else. Mr. Harris promised to handle it carefully and to keep everything ready for when the time came. By the time I left his office, I no longer felt powerless. For the first time in months, I felt like I had taken control of my own story. So when Vanessa told me at dinner to sit somewhere else, she believed she was placing me at the edge, where I would have no voice. But I knew better. Sitting beside Mr. Harris wasn't just a choice of comfort, it was a statement. It meant I was right where I needed to be, close to the man who carried the truth in his folder. As I sat there, waiting for the moment, I thought of my grandchildren. I thought of Noah's wide smile when he built his little forts in the living room, and Lily's laughter as she twirled in her princess dresses. This home, this life, wasn't just about me. It was about them. It was about making sure they had stability, love, and a connection to their grandfather's legacy. Vanessa had always underestimated me. She thought age made me weak, but she forgot that years bring wisdom, and wisdom teaches patience. I didn't need to shout or argue to win. I only needed to wait for the truth to be revealed. When Mr. Harris cleared his throat, preparing to explain the documents, I straightened in my chair. I could feel Vanessa's smug glance, as though she already saw herself as the victor. Michael looked uneasy, shifting in his seat, but he still hadn't spoken. The children sat quietly, sensing the seriousness of the moment but not understanding its weight. Inside, I was no longer. I had made my decision weeks ago. I would not surrender what my husband and I built. I would not let Vanessa rewrite the story of this family. I turned slightly to Mr. Harris, catching his eye. He gave me a small nod, a silent signal that everything was in place. That nod was all I needed to feel steady. The time for silence was almost over. The moment of truth was about to arrive, and when it did, I knew everything in that room would change. Mr. Harris adjusted his glasses and placed the thick folder on the table. The room grew quiet, and even the children sensed the seriousness in the air. Vanessa leaned forward with a satisfied smile, her hands folded neatly as if she were about to receive a prize she had long awaited. Michael shifted uncomfortably, his eyes darting between his wife and the lawyer, guilt painted across his face. I sat still, my back straight, my hands resting calmly on the table. My heart was steady, and though I knew the storm was about to break, I felt no fear. For weeks, I had prepared for this moment. Mr. Harris cleared his throat. "Before we begin, I want to make one thing very clear," he said firmly. "Your late husband, Mr. Jonathan Harris, left behind detailed instructions to ensure his family was cared for exactly as he intended. These documents are not new decisions. They are confirmations of his wishes." Vanessa's smile faltered slightly, but she quickly recovered. "Of course," she said sweetly. "We only want clarity. It's easier if everything is under one name. Isn't that right, Michael?" Michael hesitated, then nodded weakly. "Yes, it's just for simplicity." His voice lacked conviction. Mr. Harris didn't return Vanessa's smile. Instead, he opened the folder and pulled out the first set of papers. This document states that ownership of the family home remains with Eleanor. This house was purchased jointly by Jonathan and Eleanor, and his passing does not change her rights. She is the sole owner, and that will not be contested. The words struck the table like a stone in still water. Vanessa's eyes widened, her composure cracking. What? That's not what we discussed. You said... Mr. Harris raised his hand, cutting her off. I said nothing of the sort. The law is clear, and so were Jonathan's wishes. This home belongs to Eleanor. End of discussion. I looked across the table, meeting Vanessa's shocked gaze with a calm smile. You asked me to sit somewhere else, I said quietly, but I chose this seat so that my voice could be heard. Her face flushed red, and for once, she had no clever words to throw back at me. Mr. Harris continued, pulling out another document. Next, Jonathan established a trust fund under Eleanor's guardianship. This fund is reserved for Noah and Lily's education and future needs. Eleanor alone has authority over how these funds are used, and no one else may interfere. At this, the children perked up, not fully understanding, but catching the excitement in the adults' voices. Noah whispered, Grandma, what's happening? I squeezed his hand and whispered back, It means your future is safe. Vanessa slammed her hand on the table, her calm facade shattering. This is outrageous. Michael and I should be the ones in charge of that money, not her. She's old. She doesn't know how to handle it. Mr. Harris's expression hardened. With respect, Mrs. Vanessa, Jonathan entrusted his wife with these responsibilities because he knew her strength and integrity. Age is not a weakness. It is experience. For the first time, Vanessa had no reply. She sat back in her chair, her lips pressed into a thin line, fury radiating from her eyes. Michael finally spoke, his voice shaky. Vanessa, maybe we should stop. Mom deserves this. Dad wanted it this way. He turned toward me, his eyes full of regret. I should have defended you sooner. I'm sorry, Mom. The air in the room shifted. For so long, I had been quiet, enduring insults and disrespect. But now, the truth was laid bare in front of everyone. I wasn't weak. I wasn't powerless. I had simply chosen the right moment to act. I leaned forward, my voice steady but firm. I spent my life building this family with your father. I cared for this home, I raised our son, and now I help guide my grandchildren. I don't need control for myself. I need to make sure that what your father built doesn't fall into the wrong hands. Noah and Lily pressed closer to me, their innocent trust shining in their eyes. To them, none of this was about documents or ownership. To them, it was about love and safety, and they knew I had given them both. Vanessa stood abruptly, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. This isn't over, she snapped, but the power in her voice was gone. Everyone in the room had seen her lose. Mr. Harris calmly gathered the papers back into the folder. It is over, he said firmly. Jonathan's wishes are clear. Eleanor is protected. The children are protected, and nothing can change that. Silence followed. The only sounds were the children's soft whispers and the faint clinking of glasses as Clara, one of Michael's cousins, shifted nervously at the table. I sat back in my chair, exhaling slowly. For the first time in years, I felt the weight lift from my shoulders. Not because I had won an argument, but because I had finally shown them that my strength was not gone. It had simply been waiting for the right moment. That night, at the very table where Vanessa tried to push me aside, I reclaimed my place in the family. Not with shouting, not with anger, but with truth and patience. And in that moment, everyone knew I was not someone who could be erased.